Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I am Alicia Brown, Community Manager at LTX Studio. We are joined by everybody's favorite Corbett. Corbett, we're super excited to be walking through a bunch of different cool things in LTX Studio today. How are things on your end?
Pretty good. There's more and more stuff released every month, so there's a whole slate of things for us to talk about. We'll focus on there's everything ranging from different video models to different editing tools. So we'll try to just do our best to outline, what's new and talk
Yeah.
about different ways to play around with it. But yeah, it's been fun keeping pace with everything.
Yeah, it's constantly changing. They're constantly coming out with new things. I know everyone is super excited about 2.3.
Mhm.
So we can't stop talking about that. And also just shout out to everyone who is here within the first minute. There's there's Bob M, Bob N, Bree Jones, Carl, Chase, two different Chase, well, one Chase. I thought it was two different Chases. One Chase, David, Elaine. There's so many people here already, and we've been logged on for 1 minute. So thank you all for being excited about what we have here at LTX Studio. And we'll give it one more minute and then go ahead and jump into things.
Yeah. We'll start just with an agenda to a lot of people joined early, so we'll start in just a minute, but we'll go through an agenda and then I'll start with just a piece of work that some of our creative team has produced just to show some of the things you can do with these new tools. And then we'll kind of dig into the tools behind it, and I'll show you less good versions of what the team has done, but just go deeper on like how it's been achieved, basically.
For sure. And I also like to remind everyone, and for those of you just joining again, welcome to the LTX Studio webinar. We're excited to show you some new things. I like to remind everyone in attendance that while this is not an official live Q&A, and the focus is not necessarily to answer every question live, we're going to do our best to catch some of your questions. Feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we'll keep an eye on the Q&A section and try and get a couple of questions answered. If your question is not answered live, we would love for you to join our Discord channel. The LTX Studio Discord channel is always jumping with tons of people in conversation. Even if a member of the team, like myself, can't get to your question, we have community members who are constantly just giving each other shout outs and supporting where needed. So I'll get that Discord link dropped as well. But for now, Corbett, I will let you take it away from here.
Let's do it. So before I share my screen, a few notes. So today we'll talk through the release of LTX 2.3, our newest model. And if folks have been seeing on places like Hugging Face, etc., all of our open source models have been doing really great in terms of community reception. From this and the last model, over, well over 1 million downloads, which has been really cool. So it's been getting a lot of traction. But we've also integrated other models from different providers, such as Kling 3.0 Pro. So we'll kind of compare and contrast how those models are working, how you can access them. And there's news on the image model front too. We've got Nano Banana 2, which is essentially like um, I'd say it's much, much faster and like 95% as good as the Nano Banana Pro. So it's a really good use tool for using for more rapidly exploring ideas, but you still have the Pro version for the utmost quality if you want that. We'll go through a few other things. Motion control is new, where you can dictate like how people are moving in your videos. Even more stuff has been added to elements, and so I think last time we talked, it was just like fonts, maybe logo, but now you can upload lots of things. Soon you'll be able to like upload your feelings. There's so many things in elements now, and some really fun editing tools. So, for example, one of my favorite parts of the platform is the video editor, kind of at the end where you're stitching everything together. And we have some really fun new like blending and masking tools and some really neat ones that you might not have even thought you needed, but then as you play around with it, you realize you did. Like for me, that's speed control. So we'll go through that, and then but I might start actually just with a piece of work this time from a teammate, just to it encapsulates a lot of these good examples together. And so let's try the age-old test of seeing if my screen will share, and then
It
we'll take it
never
from there.
ends. We've
All
been
right,
doing this
yeah.
for like what, 6 years now, since 2020, and I'm still shocked when my sound works.
Yeah, right. Okay. So let me start just with this piece of creative. And Alasia, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So this is just a sample ad one of our teammates put together. And I just want to play it, and then we'll kind of dissect it and talk about it, where different features were used, and then we'll jump into the platform afterward.
Right, let's get started. Some places only exist once you begin listening. They change when you look at them too closely. They change even more when you try to touch them. Not everything here needs to be understood. Some things are just felt. And some are better met slowly. Imagination works like that. It opens when you follow it and closes when you stop asking. For now, it's enough to be here. Soundleaf. Listen deeper.
All right, so personally, I find this awesome in the sense that as someone who, wait, first off, did the sound come through? Because that'd be
It
important.
did.
Okay, good. So let's just like digest this a little bit. The reason I find this so cool is from someone I'd worked in advertising for like 10 years, and I really think AI has crossed this threshold of it can produce like emotional, consistent works and has enough tools to really convey a message, and even like for commercial reasons, being able to stitch everything together so that you don't get pulled out of the narrative because you like sometimes when you see the six fingers of the past you get pulled out and you're like, oh, this is AI. You can tell this is like heavily produced, but and obviously there's like magical creatures, but it doesn't feel like AI. And so that's what I really like about it. This takes a lot of work, and for example, with the stuff I'll show you today, I might have spent 30 minutes pulling together some sample clips. This can take hours. I don't want to hide the fact that a lot of work goes into this. But a few things, like first off, the character consistency. You can have characters in the platform, but you can also kind of daisy chain these things by taking a screenshot and just say, okay, now show this kid like zoomed in or using this product. And we'll show products in elements, like objects. You notice the sound, which you can overlay. One thing they'll touch on in the editing platform is that you can mix the sound. I think people might have known that, but you can not only adjust sound, but things like speed and text overlay. And some of these things were taken with like retake. For example, in other clips I've seen from this scene, a clip was generated, and then with retake, the editor had changed the ending of it so that insect flew away, for example. So some of this is our videos that were generated, then retake, then we use retake to change the ending. You might, flip the videos back and forth, get the right orientation. But I thought it was a really great example of this wonderful transition into this magical world, but then pulling it back to like the real life, and it feels like a real product. Honestly, we should make these headphones and sell them as LTX. But yeah, kudos to the creative team behind this. I believe this is Adam and crew, but
Yeah.
it's a really wonderful piece of content, and it just kind of highlights everything. So the last part, for example, for this Soundleaf is just you can upload logos, but you can also play with the transparency of clips, and so you can kind of stack them on top of each other, which is new for this month. Cool. So, any initial questions or comments, Alicia, before I move over to the platform?
Only questions about will this be recorded? It is being recorded and you will be emailed the recording.
There you go. Easy. And often we put clips and stuff on YouTube, so check that out for past webinars as well as like we do different types of webinars. Some might be focused on building out a specific piece of content or using it for commercials, etc., and just tips and tricks. Cool. So going over to this, I want to zoom in a little bit. So basically, here you have our platform. I think this is from our last webinar when we did the VR scare, where the character took off. It kind of a more spooky version of the last one, but the character was like taking off these VRs and realized that they were stuck in the VR landscape even after they took it off. You can see my past projects here. For this one, we have a much more lightweight thing I want to show you. It's just the journey of a dollar going through the world from its starting to ending. It's half baked because I want to just like work on it with the team today or with the audience today. But you might notice a few changes here. We've removed the API playground. It's also just cleaned up the screen here. we constantly show what's new at the top, like motion control, for example, which is brand new. But let me dive into this project so we can look at some things together. So first off, I have really liked the upgrades to storyboard, which we covered, I think, in the last webinar or two. It's really cool that you can see the elements tagged in the script, you know. And I still often start a project like that just to get a sense for things. I honestly redid all of these images. I didn't really like them, but I still like to see, you know, kind of a journey of like laying out my project, and it helps me think about it a little bit. But honestly, normally I start just editing these things in the gen space and then build the project out in the story editor. At the end of the day, that's kind of where I end up, you know, building things together. But we'll start here. So let's say you were, let's say you put a project in here and you're editing in Gen Space. A few notes. One thing that's kind of fun is that I think this is new from last time, but when you have a script and it kicks out into Gen Space, we actually break up the scenes into these separate Gen Space sessions, which is pretty helpful. But it might throw you off if you didn't know about that. So just to call out that if you're starting, you know, with that script and then you go to edit something in Gen Space, you will already have it kind of bucketed into these things. So that's just a one quick note on the UX. But let's look through some of the things we made. So one example would be, let's see, I did a not this one. Let's see. I want to show. So I didn't like the default like lemonade stand examples they gave me. So I was playing around with some different ones. Um, and I'll show you a few different areas where I can highlight the different video editing tools so you can see kind of the difference between the various models. So here's a pretty good one. You know, the kind of default lemonade stand was too like, I don't know, fake looking. And so I just tried to edit it a little bit to get down to an aesthetic I liked more. It felt more muted and nice. But here's a good example. So I was running the different models to show, and let's just do it again real quick so you can see. I'll take this video, I'll do create video, and I'll do, you know, the girl takes the dollar and then pours a glass of lemonade. So I'll use a few different models so you can see some things here, but just a quick orientation on the platform. So of course here you have your model selection for video. We're in the video tab. There's a lot in here now. So just as a quick recap, you can generate images, videos. We've done audio to video in past ones. Retake, which is what I mentioned when you can change part of the clip and redo a part of a clip, and motion control, which is new, which we can highlight later too. But here I'm generating a video. I have LTX 2.3 selected. There's both Pro and Fast. I'll kind of show you the relative speeds real quick. So I'll do Pro, and then I'll do Fast, generate that. Then also do the older LTX 2 Pro and Fast. And for good measure, I'll do Kling 2.6 Pro, which is, I think, pretty slow, but often does really well with physics. So these are loading down here. And while these are loading, I'll show you a couple examples. This clip you saw here was almost entirely LTX 2.3. So I've found that to be like my good daily driver, and I like it a lot. But I'll show you a few examples of when I have switched to Kling. So one example would be when pouring the lemonade. I kind of split this up into two clips, to be honest. Normally, I think splitting motion up into more clips is better for just like the action. But here's a good example. This is, you know, this is Kling Pro. You could see like the lemonade filling up and the motion's really good. And it's kind of hard these days to like, you know, get bad results for certain prompts. But here's a good
Yeah.
example where like the lemonade was steaming. It's like that's not the lemonade I want to drink. So
Coffee
that's a good
lemonade.
example. Yeah, yeah, coffee lemonade, hot lemonade, like a hot toddy. So I'd say like there are some examples where if something's really tricky with physics, etc. I have dabbled around with things like Kling, and it can be really good with that. Like I liked how Kling handled the like the pouring up of the cup, the smooth motion. But to be honest, when we're doing these types of projects, we've been sticking around with the LTX 2.3 because it's just so fast.
Yeah.
Like Kling takes maybe like 4 or 5 times as long. Um, But I think th this is an example like when I put this one here as like it's complex motion, and so when there's that, so that's when I've tried to use things like Kling. But here you go, LTX2 Pro, like it's not pouring well, etc. And I don't even know if Kling would get that one. Let's try. Not quite. So all of them didn't really work. But that's why I break them up into separate videos, as you saw up here. I split up the handing the dollar to pouring like a close up of pouring the lemonade. And that's like my best tip there. But yeah, if you're kind of playing around with physics and struggling, both try to break up the shot. And then that's when I look at playing around with the models a little bit. Cool.
That's
Any quick
helpful.
notes on the models, Elijah?
So we have a couple of questions. They're somewhat related. Eric C asked if time at the end, can you show how audio to video works? Was stuck on this yesterday.
Hmm.
We did this a little bit last time and probably we'll have time to do it today. Corbett, you let me know, but would love to get you some support on that. And then we had another question from Carl. Can you upload the character reference and environment along with the script and generate thumbnails initially and then explore different models for the scene creation? I think I get what you're trying to ask, Carl. Um, I have some thoughts, Corbett, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, and so actually, and let us know if we're hitting this correctly. But when you are creating, I'll make like I wish I'd copied my script there, or I'll see if I can copy an old one. Um, here, I'm copying an old script just so I can show. I think there's two ways to answer that question, and let us know if we get there. So for creating storyboard, I'm posting that old VR scare script. It's just super simple, just so I can show this example. You can change the model here, and you can also add styles here. But let's just say we choose, let's do Nano Banana Pro, or that'll take a little longer. Let's do this, even it won't be as quite as good. You can change the model in the beginning when it's fleshing out things, but then it'll also show like a preview of the look and feel, and you can change that after. So that's if you're using the script to start. And then, do you want to read the question? Because I think there's another way of getting to
Yep.
the answer there. Yeah.
The question is, can you upload the character reference and
Mhm.
environment along with the script and generate thumbnails initially,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
explore different models for the scene creation?
Yeah. So I'll walk through this because this will basically create thumbnails, elements. That's the neat thing. I think we talked about this in the last webinar, but the new storyboard functionality, I think we talked about this last month, but
Yeah.
if people haven't tried it in a while, it's really changed. The UX is great, the flexibility is great. And as I mentioned, I almost always end up not using the default images it gives me, but I still like seeing it laid out just to like mentally kind of plan out my scenes. And so here is the quick example where when you start with the storyboard, it will flesh out a lot of the elements for you already, and then it'll give you this look and feel. Remember, I selected this, but you can still change that. But here are my elements and the character. And for all of this, like your elements can be imported here. But once you create the storyboard, it will be creating those for you. So I'll just show that. Let's have this look and feel start. Um, Give me 1 second while it loads. Um,
And I think
and
also
yeah.
as looking at this question when he's asking about can you upload character reference and environment along with the script? To me, like that's kind of where style comes into play too, as far as
Hmm.
like keeping the environment consistent.
Hmm. And I guess maybe the question is more about like uh just instead of the script, can you like attach them? I think the easier way to do it is put the script in and then adjust the elements like
Yeah.
here. And so if I were to adjust that, like that's how I'd edit this element, like adding pictures here. Same thing with this, you can regenerate or edit here. That's how I've been doing it. But then separately, as I mentioned, once I let this generate, I'll create the storyboard and then you can see how you can edit the elements separately. So yeah, I guess it's not like you're attaching them with the script. It's more of like you're putting the script and then you can separately adjust all the elements. Oh, I didn't even
Yeah.
click regenerate. Sorry. But basically, I just want to show you can change the model and then generate the look and feel. But let me just create this real quick because then you can see the linked elements here. And if I go back to elements, now I have my elements here. Yeah. Fun place to start maybe because we were going to touch on elements anyway, so might as
Yeah.
well. This should look pretty new for folks because first off, you can now import a brand kit. I made a fake like kind of Venmo-ish thing for this like money ad I was making. It was like LTX cash. So it's not a real product, but you can import a brand kit here. These are just like test ones, but you can add new elements this way, choose what you want, and there's a lot more options now. So before I think we had characters, fonts, and logos, but we've been continuing to add spaces, locations, obviously. But when we talked about like this commercial, the kind of headphones there, the Bose looking headphones, that can be imported as an object. The location, you can be importing a look and feel of the environment here. And that just helps for your generations. You're tagging people in the gen space. I can go like this and say, Alex with the VR headset, so it makes the generation easier. Again, I really want to stress that I almost never use the defaults that come with the storyboard. I'm almost always editing it. Like to me, this looks too fake. And so I would go in here, edit with the gen space, and I would basically just play around with like if I'm trying to find like let's see a high rise building in an urban landscape. Oops, landscape. Just start playing around with different image models. This is set to Z image by default, by the way, and I like to play around with the different ones to um, let's see. It looks like we have a little error message from that. It reminds me of when we were doing in past webinars. There's many different models. We've had service providers who have glitches, but thankfully you can swap between models really easily. So we have a lot of resiliency there. But just play around with different things. Like you can also add like dystopian vibes, etc. So you can play around with the look and feel. And once I've got my mood board, then I update the element with my newer imagery, basically. So long story short, if you're starting with the storyboard, you have your elements baked in, but I'd still play around with GenSpace and then kind of re-edit them. Otherwise, you can just start a project, stay in GenSpace, and once you find something, drop the elements in there. I want to show one other way of working now that we're here. I might as well, I could stay in this project or I could go to the one I already was creating. But if you go, we have this new tool called Canvas. And for folks that are used to like Figma, for example, where you can have kind of like a board to work with, like a free open-ended board. It's a very popular way of collaborating, especially with designers. But we've made this new tool so you can have kind of like workspaces. So I might just say like building ideas. So you can have like a collaborative workspace that's more visually laid out, and you can generate images directly in that. So um, I'll just do a few more designs just to um, with a steep ledge, muted colors. Or I could say like, sunset, etc. You can build different things here. So I might do something like, characters. Um, so you can have different things here and generate or I'll do like products as well. So let me do this. I'll do VR headsets, modern looking all black VR headset. So you can be generating directly in here, which is kind of fun, but people have found this helpful to kind of lay out a workspace because the gen space is very helpful. And I've found it very helpful to favorite certain things. Like let me do one thing real quick. Show me this, but from the point of view of someone standing at the top ledge. So if you find something you like, you can favorite it, and that becomes really helpful when you're pulling up reference images, for example. Like if I add an element or add a reference image, you can toggle to your favorites. And so my my generations are so chaotic, but like you can toggle to your favorites to really easily access things versus new. But people still find the canvas space really helpful for organizing stuff. And so that's kind of been a missing picture where you might have so many things you've liked and generated, but um, there's not been like a easy way to pull them out of all of your generations, for example. And this way you can, like you can make this canvas with your team to kind of get a sense of the project on a holistic level. Like, okay, now we're getting a better ledge, for example. Um, and I might really like some generations I've made and I want to show them to other people. And so you can start to like build out like mood boards this way, etc. And I've honestly I really like it for just kind of like putting my thoughts down on paper. It's kind of like an open workspace, and as you recall, you can collaborate. And so when you have multiple people in here building this out, it's kind of a really quick way of getting a view on like where you're at with your imagery. And you have elements, of course, but maybe you haven't finalized them. So it's like a really good mood boarding tool, kind of like a LTX Figma plus Pinterest in a way. So it's been great.
Yeah, it reminds me of like just having like scratch paper back in like
Yeah.
middle school.
Yeah. And there's kind of the it's like endless. So you can do a lot with it. And it's made for like kind of building out um and collaborating. And so it's free form for sure. And but it still integrates with everything else. So you can generate right in here, as mentioned. I could take this last ones I favorited, import here and say, show me someone standing on the edge wearing a VR headset. Um, so like yeah, being able to generate in here and it's integrated so you can pull in favorites from the other things. We've tried to all make this pretty seamless. And so if you haven't tried it, if you especially if you're just kind of getting your head around a project, try localizing some of your thoughts in here. And then again, you can still pull them into the other parts of the platform later. Um, so a few other notes like generating video, layering, uses reference, downloading, all those tools are still in here. Cool. All right. So going back, let me go back to this money project. I want to show a few things. So let's see, we covered just going back to this agenda first. So we touched on some of the video models like LTX 2.3, Kling Pro. I might as well touch on some of the image model changes before we go to some of the video editing tools. So here, for example, I I didn't like, necessarily the original like dollar bills that were pouring off the line. They were weird, too big, etc. And so I was using different video models to get better, more realistic looking, dollars to roll off the line. And a few examples here is let's fix something else so I can show. So the Nano Banana is 2 is pretty fast. You think about Nano Banana 2 as like um, very similar to Pro. I'd say like
Yeah.
95% is good, but it's much faster. And you have to keep in mind the token usage as well. And so we try to do a pretty good job here. Like when certain video things are going to be, costly from a token point of view, we try to point that out. Um, but if you're looking at images, we try to um, describe them here, but this is the cost-effective one, and it's a little confusing because 2 sounds like better, newer. It's newer, but it's based on speed and cost efficiency. So play around with all these. Z image, very fast, very efficient. Flux 2 Pro can be good for like cinematic stuff. Nano Banana Pro is probably the best if you really need to like fix like almost like image editing. But I was playing around with Nano Banana 2 a lot just because I needed quick results. So here's an example, like when you can see I was trying to make the dollar bills more realistic. Um, I think that if you're trying to nail something with accuracy, use the Pro. But if you're just quickly building something out, play around with the Nano Banana 2 just because it's really quick and cost efficient. So we'll do one example there. Going back to my storyboard. Let's see what we should make. Um, let's just do this one. Like, there's a musician busking on the street and they're gonna get $1, but I can just say like, a musician, oops, busking on the street, let's say, um, in the subway, for tips. So I'll show you how these compare. So Z image is the default here. I'll flip to Flux 2 Pro, then I'll flip to Nano Banana Pro, and then Nano Banana 2. So running these all Z image is really quick. Like it's already done it. So that's the most cost efficient, most fastest. But to be honest, quality wise, I don't use it. I probably use it the least in terms of like trying to get high quality. Like I like the composition of this better. Like the a musician naturally wouldn't be right in the middle of the platform, and the composition of someone like kind of leaning against the wall a little bit better. I like that there's built-in text there, and the text isn't screwed up, which is great. So any of these, for example, I feel is a bit better than, my default images, but this gives you a good sense. Like between Nano Banana Pro and Nano Banana 2, not a huge difference, but one is just more efficient. I still kind of like the Pro results a bit better, but they're pretty close.
Someone had
And
a
then, yeah.
question
Mhm.
about identifying individual object manipulation. So
Right, like in a
everyone,
photo. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I mean, and let me know if I'm answering this question correctly, but let me show this. So if I drag this image, and if I want to change something, um, let's say the text or just remove the sign, I could do a few things. So first off, let me go to image. Um, sorry, one second. Edit with brush. So one way to really zoom in a little bit is you can use brush to change things in particular. So for example, I could change, I don't know, this, and I did not really circle that well, but let's see if it works. You could say change the guitar color to blue or something. It's not like going to look great, but that's one probably the best way is using brush to get really detailed. You don't
Yeah.
honestly need it. If it's clear there's only one thing in the image, you don't need it. Like for here, I could say change the text to say, tips required. So here you can see it changed the object I circled. But I'll show you one more thing, which is if it's not confusing to the image, like there's many people in here, so I can't just say change the person to X, Y, and Z. You'd want to circle that. But if there's just one thing, you probably don't need it. So I'll show you real quick. Um, Even on that original image, if I just say change the guitar to blue, this will probably still work. Change the guitar to blue. I use brush when it's kind of tricky. Like if I was trying to circle the graffiti, for example, and say like change this graffiti or whatever. But oh, and fun note, by the way, you can also speaking of elements, let me just this uh tip is pretty fun. I've said this before, but if you use parameters, it'll redo the exact same thing. So for example, my like edit with brush thing is still in the memory, and my text is still there. So this copies the entire prompt, image, everything. But you can also say use font, and I can change the font, for example. And for fonts, as a quick reminder, you can just take a picture of your computer's font book. So just find a font you like. And again, if you're using this for commercial purposes, make sure you have the rights to it. But
Yeah.
you can find a pretty neat font. Just take a screenshot in your font book and upload that as an element, and so you can have that. So let me go back to this before we move on, just to show. Like here, I didn't need the brush. It still changed the guitar to blue. So just to point out, like brushes for when it's probably confusing for the AI, and and so like you don't necessarily need it, but that's the best way to do object editing. And again, Nano Banana Pro would be like your best object editing. Um, Nano Banana 2 would be like slightly under that. All right. We're kind of bopping around here, but let me try to get back to a format. So we talked about the LTX 2.3, Nano Banana 2, Kling 3.0 Pro. Some of the elements, we'll touch them again. And before I get into some of the editing stuff, it's worth going to show a little bit more about some of the video tools. So let's just do this. Let's say. Let's just go back to this one and we'll make a video real quick. So I'll say create video. The guy is playing guitar. lazy prompt. So one more note here. So um, generating images, you all are familiar with video. We'll touch on audio to video later. I need to just grab an audio clip because I think I like moved all the files from my last webinar, so I don't have it handy. But as a quick note, you could just drop in your audio file here, and it's best to kind of give direction on like who's speaking or who's playing, etc. We can go back to that project if there's time at the end. But this is, and people might be familiar with retake, which we'll show, but the motion control part is new. So adding the motion reference here, you can add a start frame, and this way it can extract motion from someone's example. And here you can see there's both image, like it starts from the references pose, as well as video. And this way you can overlay a specific motion onto someone else. So if you're trying to get them to do something specific, find that reference image or video, upload it. And to be honest, you might even do it all within LTX. Like you might grab a reference video from LTX and use that to drive the motion. We've had some of that in the past, but depending on what models are here, we haven't had it for many recent models, but this is new. So it's like improved. And from if you've played around with that like months ago, I would give this another shot because just the tech behind it is advancing so well. But yeah, so here, I'd say the motion control I've used for if someone's like running or jumping in a specific way, etc. For default motion though, you can probably just change the prompt, like the people stand still or whatever. I'd use this for when you want really like fine-tuned control over like a body's movements. Maybe something like, I don't know, a fight scene or something like that, which is more intricate than people just walking. It's not really as useful for that. All right. Then I do want to show the video editing part. So let's just say this is not fully baked, but just for illustration only. Let's just say we're following this dollar through its journey of being created. I'll play a few seconds just to set the tone real quick. Oh, wait, I need sound. There you go. Sound. So let's just say it goes through this process, the guy, the dollars go through circulation, goes from the guy to the girl who buys ice cream, etc. And then maybe at the end we want it to go into like a vending machine and it gets rejected and spit back out. And maybe this is an ad for like some Apple Pay type thing, or because this is recorded LTX Pay. I want to show a few things that I really like about the changes to this part of the platform. This is probably the part of the platform that's most near and dear to my heart because you can really fine tune things, and all of this is great to me. Like the stunning power of GenSpace to create anything you want and edit things. It's really amazing. But for me, what's important for creators is shipping the work. And if you can't get to a point where you can ship it, projects tend to get stuck. And what I love about this is once you get to the video editor, we're putting more and more tools to get you to a point where you feel like you can export this, not just package it up for another platform, which you could do, but export it and get it out in the world. And I think that last mile is really critical. So a few things. As you noticed, the clips that I generated had sound to them. So I'll play it one more time. But you can adjust that. And what I love about that, as a quick one, like this isn't these not all this is new, but we'll get to it. But what I love about that is that the new audio video models, like for example, LTX 2.3, they generate audio by default. And it adds a lot to the color to a project when it's not just sound and there's some effects, but titrating that is important. So here, for example, we have like the burr of the printer. And you might want to adjust that volume so it's not distracting. Like if it's too loud, here, way too loud, for example.
Yeah.
And so if we titrate that down, it can keep the element of the story like this. So that's one. But then what you might not have seen before is we've added this opacity and blending mode. That's how you can achieve things like this, where you have something blended over top. And you can do that with elements. For example, I can take here, I'll just try to show you real quick. You can take something like a screenshot of this, and then I'll just make this logo. This is not going to be like perfect, but you can go to your project and say, you know, new element, logo, um, and I'll drop in, my new screenshot. So you can take, let's say, sound, a logo like this. Um, Obviously, you'd want it not with the images in the background. And you can take an image and say, let me just make a new gen space. Um, so here we have this. So I have my the image here, and I can say um, add like LTX. I'll do this LTX cache logo. Oh, it's not in this project. Logo. Yeah, okay. I forgot I didn't put my yeah, there we go. The sticky controls will get you sometimes. I
Yeah.
forgot I was in motion control. All
I
right,
was
so I
gonna
can
say
say,
there's a button I've
yeah.
been using a lot lately too that allows you to just like clear out the prompt in general once I'm in the gen space, and it's so helpful.
hmm Yeah, I find myself constantly at the mercy of the sticky settings, but you want them because if you don't have them, you regret it even more. So like if you don't have the sticky settings, you're kind of starting from scratch every time. So I added like a logo here, but it's some you can do it, but it's harder. And so I'll show you two different ways. Um, One is, and this isn't like the cleanest logo. I added a whole brand kit here, so I probably should just extract the logo from it, which I can do in a second if this doesn't work. Um, so like yeah, he put it on the little pad he's using, but you can inject things into it using elements, but you can also create two different things and blend them together. So going back to the video editor, let's just say I have a end card. Oops, let me make this volume a little less. Let's say that all right, so if you have some like kind of end card like this, this is very crude, bear with me. But right now, for example, they're just stacked overlaying each other and it will play one or the other. But you have an opacity tool now, and so you can handle like let's say you have an end card or something over it, or you want to blend things together. You also have different blend modes here, and so you can play around with them to understand like how they how they'll affect your imagery. Like see like one blending through the other through multiply, the screen overlay, and so like overlay wouldn't work here because one's completely black, but you might want something to peer through something else. So you have these pretty cool. This is not made to show you the best versions of all these, but I just want to show you like how they come through. But you have a really cool way of handling the blending now through different things, and I know people have asked for that for a long time, and so you can play around with that. Like let's say blending something inside something else, like um, a, a, a video is happening inside of a circle or a text box or something. So you have these ways of stacking the videos now, which is brand new and really fun to play with. And that's how you can achieve some of these like overlaying effects with a logo or more complicated transitions or title scenes, things like that.
We also received
Um,
one
yeah.
question, and I feel like it's a question we always get, but I always think it's worth acknowledging and answering. On prompting with LTX, should prompts be very detailed, or is it better to
Mm.
not overthink it? Is there value in using a GPT to generate long, highly detailed prompts for a single scene, or do you typically see better results with something simpler and more focused?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
I'll say this. Some of the best, I feel like some of the best creators within LTX are lazier at prompting than you think. Um, Often the strongest way to get a prompt is from reference images, not even the prompt itself. So let me show one more example. Um, I'm so lazy, often I just take screenshots because I just want a coloring. And so let's just say that like let me go back to GenSpace and just say like um, uh, a woman drinking a glass of wine on her couch at home. So like uh, one way to do it is to just find the right mood. For example, I could say like the reference image is this coloring. And so let's just grab one of these examples and I'll add the coloring to it. So don't underestimate the power of reference images, first off. So like this is too bright, for example, and let's say I want this, and I can say keep the image of the woman, oops, woman drinking wine on the couch, but use softer lighting like this reference image. And so I can just drop in my reference image. Um, and so that's one way to do it. I would say this, like I have used definitely ChatGPT, Claude, etc., for both coming up with prompts, characters, act scripts. It's pretty good at you can give an idea and it'll make a storyboard script for you. But if you play around with long prompts, you often don't need too much because some of the few pieces of it will drive more value than others. Like the sometimes it's like a few keywords like muted colors or something will drive more. So let's see. Um, you can get a lot with just a few. Oops, I should have said more. Use. But yeah, I've played around with both. I would say using reference images helps a lot. But especially to try to get like the initial feel of your project, you can ask chat for like what are some high impact words to use. Like it'll sometimes give you like directors' names and things like that. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I have used that to get like a look and feel. So yeah, I would say don't go crazy over prompting it. But try to find you can find like a few keywords from chat to get there. Okay.
Especially if you already have your script.
What do you say?
Especially if you already have
Yeah.
your own script.
Yeah. All right, so we have just a little bit more time left, but so just to recap a few things, we went through the some of the new video models, including 2.3, Kling, and some of the image models like Nano Banana 2, Pro, how it contrasts with Pro. We've done a bit with blending mode, transparency of layers. I want to show one more thing in this section, actually. So sometimes you'll get a good prompt, a good video, and it's too fast or slow. So for example, I got one recently. Yeah, like this one. I think when I played it, just a little too slow. And we added the speed function, so you can speed things up a little bit, and that really helps because oftentimes AI will give you a good prompt, but it feels like a little slow motion. And so this way it can help you change that clip. And I can make it even a little faster. Let's do this. Then if it's too fast, it might feel like, too AI, but one of the things I found is that in the gen space, let's see, I think it was in here. Let's see, not that one. Um, it was giving me some really, oh, here, probably was this one. It was giving me some pretty good results, but they were quite slow. And so, like, if you see, for example, this hand like slowly pulling away or whatever, now if you have something where you still like the composition of it or whatever, but it feels too slow or dreamy, like this one's fine, but it's a little slow, you can just put that straight into the video editor like this. You can send to video editor here and then you can speed it up. And I found that to be a great way of like saving a lot of time on generation because I'm not wasting my time of like, all right, do this, but make it faster or whatever. Um, and finally, like we talked about this before, but retake can also work. Like if you aren't getting the certain result at the end, you can trim it or retake it. So it's worth mentioning to that one. But yeah, I think that's most of it. We've gotten through most of what we've wanted. We already have stuff we know we're going to present for next month because there's so much coming out. But before we wrap, we can take either more questions or Leisha, if you have any comments around, community or upcoming things, we can touch on them now too.
Yeah, one more question. Someone asked, can you bring in an audio track for lip sync in your image and animate the scene in GenSpace?
Yes, I think they'll give me a second because it's been a minute. I had a project where I was working on that, but after all the webinars, I kind of packaged up my files
Yeah.
and so let me see if I can find it. But I was working on it. Gosh, where was that? I can't remember. It might have been a little bit ago. Um,
While you're looking for that, I'll do my Discord plug. If you are new, you haven't heard this, if you've heard this before, I'm going to keep encouraging you to join the Discord. So we have a Discord where we talk all things studio. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Let's see. And there, like I mentioned, if there are questions, especially questions that you maybe asked about the model today that we weren't able to answer, you can get that question or questions like that answered in the Discord. As far as studio goes, there's a tips and tricks channel, there's a showcase channel. And so it's kind of like this webinar, but beyond. There's a lot more resources. So I just dropped the chat and definitely think you should use that as a resource as you learn studio.
and I think I did find, it's funny, I found the project where I was, but I want to be able to show it with the audio files I had. I can't find the audio files I used, but this was the project. I mean, I guess I could, so here's like an audio. So what I did in this webinar, I just used different things. Like I used 11 Labs for one of them, and in fact, we had some partnerships here when we first brought this to market. But I used 11 Labs to generate some audio. You could also record it. You can upload anything else, and you just drop in an audio file like this.
When I'm out on the water, sound tells me everything.
So you drop that in here, and you have a reference image. But we talked about a few things here where let's just see what it looked like first here.
Sound tells me everything.
So it does pretty well with the voice generation. And what's nice about it is in the platform, you do have voices, like your characters can have their own voices. But this way, instead of using one of these uh, default ones, you can create a voice. But if you have just a piece of audio you already had, you can pull that into your project. But there are a few things that were worth talking about. Like I'm trying to find the project, but we had like a monster podcast I made, and you have to be pretty clear about like who's speaking when. God, what webinar was that? I can't remember. I feel like it was a
It
few months
was
ago.
months ago, but I remember the characters.
I know that's so funny. I can't. Let me just look real quick. Um, Puppet Podcast. This was probably it. So yeah, here we go. Let me just show this real quick because just to recap a few tips on audio to video. So here we have this.
Before we start, I need to say something.
Please don't.
We're being controlled.
By who?
So here when we were playing around with this from before, forgot about these guys. They're really fun.
Welcome back to the Puppet
Anyway,
Podcast.
so we had a audio file that we put in here, and I'll show it. But you have to be pretty detailed about like who's speaking, and if you have lots of dialogue, you'll have to probably break it up into separate clips. So that's why I did here. I had this one broken up into two separate clips because you can say like the green character says X, the blue character says Y. But after so much back and forth, the computer or like the AI starts to kind of lose track. And so that's one tip is like splitting it up. It also helps because it can be hard to get different vantage points. Like see how here there's different viewpoints, like slightly different viewpoints of his character. Let's see.
This is a safe space for ideas, which is good because mine wouldn't survive outside.
If you're trying to kind of change in, so you can avoid the character just saying one thing in one static image, I think breaking it up into separate videos is important. And so keep that in mind if you're struggling with audio to video. And also, you got to be more detailed. If it's just one character, you can just say the character speaks. But if it's more than that, you kind of have to give detail about what happens in the movie and when people speak, and it's a little more challenging than you think. Hence why I suggest splitting them up as much as you can into separate shots. Does that answer? Is any other follow-up questions there, or did I answer that one well enough?
That question is answered. We also got one other question where someone asked, could this platform be used for creating edutainment documentary short videos? And the answer is yes. We
Hmm.
lean on our community to use the platform in as many ways as you can come up with. And we're always excited to see how you use them. Like I mentioned in the Discord, there's a channel called Showcase. And so we love to see what people created there.
Yeah.
And then
I
someone
honestly,
asked,
yeah, I think it
sorry, go
goes
ahead.
best with that. Like, this kind of mixture of like real and dream world is what AI is the best at because filming this in a traditional shoot, for example, is really difficult, but also it's really good at this stuff too. So, like, educational documentaries with characters, so much lower production cost than if you were to create it any other way. And people give you kind of a pass when you have characters versus people. But even when you're mixing real people with a more fantastical environment, like a historical documentary or something, it works better than ever now with like LTX 2.3 Pro, I'd say.
Other than that, I got all the questions. Well, not all of them, but we got most of the questions answered. Carl said that he'll be joining the Discord today. We love to hear that. And like Corbett mentioned, there are constantly things being added. And so next month, I'm sure there'll be just as much, if not more, to share. But for today, thank you everyone for joining. I dropped that Discord link in the chat. And Corbett, thank you. We always appreciate the time we get to spend with you in studio.
It's always fun. Thanks everyone for joining. There's a lot of you in the crowd today, so that was great. But we'll also be posting this a recording, so you'll have that as well. And again, Discord's great for more like direct
Yep.
comments and help, etc., and seeing more work from the community. So check that out now. I'd say that's the best thing you can do after this. All
Absolutely.
right.
And yes, you will be getting recording. We got some great feedback. Great session. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank y'all
all.
for
All
joining
right.
us. We'll see you
See
at the
ya.
next one.